Welcome everyone to the Anatomy and Physiology Overview series. My name is Dr. Saadat, and I'm an educator with a passion for helping students understand the structure and function of the human body. In each session, I'll offer a concise and informative summary of the key concepts in anatomy and physiology. I hope this series will provide a solid overview and help you prepare for your upcoming exam. In today's session, I'll go over key aspects of the digestive system. Introduction. The digestive system's primary function is to break down food and extract essential nutrients that our cells need to function properly. This complex process can be broken down into three key steps. First, digestion. The mechanical and chemical breakdown of food into smaller, more absorbable components. Second, absorption and transport of nutrients in blood for distribution throughout the body. Third, propulsion of food through the digestive system and elimination of waste products. Organs of the digestive system. Let's take a closer look at the organs that make up this remarkable system. The digestive system consists of the alimentary canal, through which the food passes, and the accessory organs that aid in digestion. The alimentary canal, also known as the gastrointestinal tract, is a long muscular tube that stretches from the mouth to the anus. The different parts of this tube are the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. On the other hand, accessory organs of the digestive system are salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. Wall of the alimentary canal. The wall of the alimentary canal consists of four layers. First, mucosa, the innermost layer, lined with epithelium, responsible for absorption and secretion. In certain parts of the alimentary canal, the epithelium of mucosa extends into the lumen, forming a finger-like projection called villi, which increases surface area. Second, submucosa. This layer is made of connective tissue containing blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatic vessels. Third, muscular layer, composed of two layers of smooth muscles, inner circular and outer longitudinal. The muscular layer mixes food with gastric juices and moves food through the canal. Fourth, serosa. The outermost layer is made of visceral peritoneum that protects underlying tissues and secretes fluid to keep the alimentary canal from sticking to other tissues in the abdominal cavity. Movements of the alimentary canal. The smooth muscle in the alimentary canal wall generates two types of movements. First, mixing movements, segmental contraction of circular muscle layer that churns and mix food with digestive juices. Second, peristalsis, wave-like contractions of longitudinal muscle that propel food forward through the canal. Mouth. Let's start the journey of food that begins in the mouth. The mouth is the first part of the alimentary canal. The mouth receives food, initiates mechanical breakdown through chewing, also called mastication, and mixes food with saliva. Saliva contains an enzyme called amylase that begin the chemical digestion of carbohydrates. The mouth is surrounded by cheeks, lips, tongue, and palate. Cheeks form the lateral walls of the mouth, and lips surround the opening of the mouth. The tongue, made of skeletal muscle, is an organ on the floor of the mouth, and the palate makes up the roof of the mouth. The tongue contains many bumps called papillae, which contain taste buds. It also plays an important role in mixing and swallowing. The palate forms the roof of the mouth. The anterior part is formed by the palatine bone, hence called the hard palate, while the posterior part, which is called the soft palate, is made of muscle. You can also see an extension of the soft palate in the midline called uvula, which functions to close off the nasal cavity during swallowing. Associated with the palate in the back of the mouth are lymphatic tissue called tonsils. They help to protect the body against infection. Teeth. In human beings, two sets of teeth develop in sockets within the alveolar processes of the maxillae and mandible. Primary teeth, also called deciduous teeth, are 20 in numbers and are replaced by age 6 to 12 by secondary or permanent teeth. Teeth play a crucial role in the digestive process by cutting, tearing, and grinding food. Different shapes of teeth are adapted to handle food in different ways and include incisors, cuspids, bicuspids, and molars. Structure of a tooth. Each tooth can be divided into two main parts. First, crown, the visible portion of the tooth above the gum line. Second, root, the portion anchored within the jawbone. The crown is covered by a hard, protective layer called enamel, composed primarily of calcium phosphate. Enamel is the hardest substance in the human body. Beneath the enamel lies dentin, a softer, bone-like tissue that forms the bulk of the tooth. At the center of the tooth lies the pulp cavity, which houses nerves and blood vessels. Finally, the tooth is firmly held in place by the periodontal ligament, a specialized connective tissue that connects the tooth to the jawbone. Salivary glands. Now let's shift our focus to the salivary glands. Salivary glands are exocrine glands that produce saliva which moistens and binds food together. Saliva also begins the chemical digestion of carbohydrates by the enzyme salivary amylase. There are three main pairs of salivary glands: parotid glands, located on either side of the face near the ears; submandibular glands, located beneath the lower jaw; and sublingual glands, located under the tongue. Pharynx. The pharynx, also known as the throat, is a muscular tube located at the back of the nasal cavity, oral cavity, and larynx. It acts as a passage, directing food from the mouth to the esophagus and air into the larynx and trachea. The pharynx is divided into three sections. Nasopharynx, the topmost section, connected to the nasal cavity; oropharynx, the middle section where food passes from the mouth; and laryngopharynx, the lowest section, adjacent to the larynx and trachea. Swallowing mechanism. The process of swallowing, also called deglutition, guides the food into the esophagus and prevents entry of food into the airway. Swallowing can be divided into three stages. Stage 1. Preparation. The tongue mixes food with saliva, forming a ball called a bolus. The tongue then pushes the bolus to the back of the mouth. Stage 2. Reflex activation. Sensory receptors in the pharynx detect the bolus, triggering a reflex. The soft palate and uvula rise, closing off the nasal cavity. The epiglottis, a flap-like structure, seals the trachea. The lower esophageal sphincter relaxes, opening the passage to the stomach. Stage 3. Propulsion. Wave-like muscular contractions, also called peristalsis, push the bolus down the esophagus and into the stomach. Esophagus. The esophagus acts as a muscular tube, propelling food from the pharynx to the stomach. It's located in the mediastinum behind the trachea and passes through the diaphragm before it connects to the stomach. Mucus glands are scattered throughout the walls of the esophagus and produce mucus to moisten and lubricate the inner lining of the tube. The lower esophageal sphincter, also called cardiac sphincter, helps to prevent regurgitation of the stomach contents into the esophagus. Stomach. The stomach is a J-shaped muscular organ located under the diaphragm on the left upper quadrant of the abdominal cavity. The stomach's function is to mix food with gastric juices to begin protein digestion. The stomach can be divided into four regions. Cardiac region connects to the esophagus where food enters. Fundic region, the large dome-shaped upper part. Body, the main portion of the stomach. Pyloric region connects to the first part of small intestine called the duodenum. At the end of the pyloric region, there is a muscular ring called pyloric sphincter, which controls the release of food from the stomach into the small intestine. Gastric secretions. Inside the stomach lining are tiny glands that produce various digestive juices, collectively called gastric juice. These juices play crucial roles in protein digestion. Gastric glands generally contain four types of secretory cells. 1. Mucus cells produce a thick protective layer shielding the stomach lining from stomach acids. 2. Chief cells secrete pepsinogen, an enzyme that breaks down proteins into smaller peptides once activated by stomach acid. The active form of pepsinogen is pepsin. 3. G cells produce gastrin, a hormone that stimulates acid production by parietal cells. 4. Parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid, creating the acidic environment needed for pepsinogen activation and killing harmful bacteria. Parietal cells also secrete the intrinsic factor which is required for vitamin B12 absorption in the small intestine. Regulation of gastric secretions. Gastric juice production isn't a constant process. It's carefully regulated to ensure optimal digestion without harming the stomach. Three main mechanisms control gastric juice production. Cephalic phase. The sight, smell, or even thought of food activates the parasympathetic nervous system to increase gastric juice secretion, preparing your stomach for the upcoming food. Gastric phase. As food enters the stomach, stretching of the stomach wall stimulates the release of gastrin, which further increases gastric juice production to break down the food. Intestinal phase. As partially digested food, also called chyme, leaves the stomach and enters the small intestine, hormones like cholecystokinin, or CCK, signal the stomach to slow down acid production and motility, allowing the small intestine to do its job effectively. The stomach absorbs only small quantities of water and certain salts, alcohol, and some lipid-soluble drugs. Eventually, the stomach passes the chyme to the duodenum a little at a time using peristaltic waves. Pancreas. Now let's shift our focus to the pancreas, which is an important organ in the digestive system. Pancreas is located inferior to the stomach. It has a shrimp-like structure with the head surrounded by duodenum, and the tail extending to the left towards the spleen. Pancreas has both endocrine and exocrine functions. The exocrine function produces pancreatic juice that aids digestion. These pancreatic cells cluster around tiny tubes that merge to form larger ones, and then give rise to the pancreatic duct. The pancreatic and bile ducts join and empty into the duodenum, which is regulated by the hepatopancreatic sphincter. Secretions and functions of the pancreas. Pancreatic juice contains 4 classes of enzymes that break down the 4 ingested organic macromolecules. These enzymes include amylase, which acts on carbohydrates, lipase, breaks down lipids, proteinases such as trypsin and chymotrypsin acting on proteins, and nucleases that break down DNA and RNA. Additionally, pancreatic juices contain bicarbonate ions to neutralize acidic chyme entering the duodenum from the stomach. Regulation of pancreatic secretion. When duodenum fills with acidic chyme, cells in duodenum release hormones secretin and cholecystokinin. This hormone stimulates the release of pancreatic juice, which neutralizes the acidic chyme and breaks down food. Liver. The largest internal organ is located under the diaphragm in the right upper quadrant of the abdominal cavity. The liver has many functions such as metabolism of macromolecules, storage of vitamins, filtration of blood from worn cells, and detoxification of chemicals. However, its digestive function is emulsification of fats. Emulsification means breaking up fat globules into small droplets to increase surface area and increase the effectiveness of the pancreatic enzyme lipase. Liver structure. The liver is divided into right and left lobes and is enclosed by a fibrous capsule. Each lobe is made up of hepatic lobules consisting of hepatic cells radiating from a central vein. Hepatic sinusoids separate groups of hepatic cells. Hepatic lobules also contain Kupffer cells, which are macrophages, and carry on phagocytosis in the liver. Blood enters the liver sinusoids and then drains into central veins, which come together and form hepatic vein that drains into inferior vena cava. Bile. Bile is a yellowish-green liquid that hepatic cells secrete. It includes water, bile salts, bile pigments, cholesterol, and electrolytes. Bile pigments are breakdown products from red blood cells. It's worth remembering that only the bile salts have a digestive function. Bile from hepatic cells is collected in bile canals that converge to become hepatic ducts, and finally form the common hepatic duct. The gallbladder is located in the underside of the liver, and it's connected to the liver by cystic duct. The function of gallbladder is to store bile between meals. Bile flows from the liver through common hepatic duct and from the gallbladder via cystic duct. These 2 ducts form the common bile ducts which drain along with pancreatic juice in duodenum. When duodenum fills with fatty chyme, cells in duodenum secrete the hormone cholecystokinin that stimulates the walls of the gallbladder to release bile. Small intestine. Now we enter the small intestine, the stage for the final act of chemical digestion and nutrient absorption. This muscular tube, much longer than its name suggests, is about 20 feet long and can be divided into 3 sections. Duodenum, the closest to the stomach, receiving chyme and digestive juices from the pancreas and liver. Jejunum, the mid-region responsible for the majority of nutrient absorption. Ileum, the final section connected to the large intestine by the ileocecal valve, acts as a gatekeeper. The small intestine is suspended from the abdominal wall by a double-layered fold of peritoneum called mesentery. Functions of the small intestine. Small intestine completes the digestion of the nutrients in chyme, absorbs the products of digestion, and transports the remaining residue to the large intestine. It receives secretions from pancreas and liver. Additionally, cells of small intestine secrete mucus and digestive enzymes, which include peptidases that convert protein peptides to amino acids. Intestinal lipase converts triglycerides to fatty acids. Sucrase, maltase, and lactase acts on carbohydrate disaccharides to simple sugar called monosaccharides. Absorption in the small intestine. The small intestine is the major site of absorption of nutrients and water within the alimentary canal. Simple sugars called monosaccharides are absorbed through active transport or facilitated diffusion and enter blood capillaries. Building blocks of proteins called amino acids are absorbed by active transport and are carried away in the blood. Fatty acids, which are building blocks of lipids, are absorbed in small intestine cells by simple diffusion. The endoplasmic reticulum of small intestinal cells adds proteins to fatty acid, forming chylomicrons. Chylomicrons are then transported by lymphatic vessels called lacteals, which eventually join the bloodstream. Besides nutrients, the small intestine also absorbs water through osmosis. Large intestine. We've reached the final part of our digestive system. The large intestine is about 5 feet long and consists of the following parts. Cecum. This pouch-like structure marks the beginning of the large intestine, where the ileum from the small intestine connects. Also, the appendix is attached to the cecum. Next is colon, which is further divided into ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid regions. Next is rectum. This muscular chamber temporarily stores waste material or feces until elimination. Finally, anal canal, the final passageway leading to the anus, the body's opening for waste elimination. The anal canal is guarded by an involuntary internal anal sphincter and a voluntary external anal sphincter muscle. The structure of the large intestine is relatively the same as other parts of the alimentary canal. However, there are a few differences. 1. It lacks villi. 2. The longitudinal muscular layer forms 3 bands called tenei coli. 3. Pouches or haustra develop due to the tension of the tenei coli. 4. The serosa layer has fatty extensions called epiploic appendages. Function of the large intestine. Unlike the smaller intestine, the large intestine doesn't actively participate in digestion or nutrient absorption. However, it does absorb water, electrolytes, and vitamins made by bacteria. Undigested and unabsorbed material in the large intestine forms feces, which is removed from the body through the defecation reflex. This concludes our overview session on the digestive system. I hope you found it helpful. Until our next session, take care of yourselves and keep learning.